What's going on, YouTube? Chris Pearson here, as always, with you. Um, Last week, we completed the final video of the Jaguars Quarterback Quest series. We took the top 5 guys the Jaguars invited to their camp and determined who would be best fit for them. So that series is now done. Don't know what we're going to do, maybe something similar for that next year. Time will tell. We're still in the off season for football, and of course, basketball season now is pretty much over for college. So that means new series, something different, something new, something old, something new. You know. And I've tried a lot of different things on here. Thankfully, some have stuck over the years. But this series is, and I was thinking of a name for this, and the only thing I can really think of for this is called. This will now be called Plugged In. This will be a weekly, hopefully a weekly breakdown of recent game sales for the week, and then looking at overall of the year so far, 2014 in video gaming, and how things have broken down overall for each of the big releases. As you guys know, I really started getting into it a couple years ago, obviously through my job, but working in retail. But also, I'm starting to watch, of course, E3, the gaming conference every summer. Watching, tracking the game sales. Last year, doing the best, worst, disappointing games of 13. Of course, I watch Angry Joe Show a lot, so I really started to get into it, and now I'm really looking more and more concretely at sales overall, not just for my store, but overall to really get a real, true measurement of how games are doing as a whole overall. Of course, also with the next-gen consoles being out, that's kind of a big thing too, seeing how their exclusive games are doing, um, along with the multi-platforms as well, but mostly just focusing on seeing those exclusives and how they're faring against the rest of their competition. So, with that being said, let's take a look first at just the weekly chart for the week. Now, I will say that the source that I get my information from, they're usually about a week behind, and really, actually, this is the only site that I could really find that kind of lists the weekly breakdown. And shameless plug alert: the site I use, the site I look up these up at, vgcharts.com. It's really the only site that I could really find that that really tends to really kind of gives a chart or breakdown information, and they do hardware, they do software, they do all different kinds of things. So really, that's the one that really, the only one out there I could find that really kind of tracks this data and this information, kind of give consumers a gauge of where the games are at and how they're doing. So for this week, this is actually, it's kind of also a week behind. So it's the week ending of April 5th. So it's the week prior to the week before. So this is the week ending April 5th that they track these sales. Top game selling in America, and really this shouldn't surprise anybody, it's Elder Scrolls Online. Obviously, the Elder Scrolls franchise is huge. We knew that when this game was first announced, it was going to get a lot of hype, a lot of excitement. And now this is just the PC version. Now, I don't really look at the PC versions too often in terms of a whole for tracking, so when the console version comes out later in the year, that's the one I think that's really going to tell the tale for this game, how well it's going to fare. Now, obviously, I think it's going to be one of the top games out there, period, because, again, the name alone is so huge. I mean, for gosh sake, Skyrim is still selling. The first Skyrim Legendary, they're all still selling well. The anthology for the PC. So there's a lot writing on this is going to do well. And it sold over 100,000 copies first week, 127,000 plus, which that isn't that bad. It's definitely for a PC title, it's a strong showing. So I think as time goes on, hopefully it will climb a little bit more. But at least it made its statement early. I don't know if it'll stay #1 ongoing, because obviously there's more titles coming out. Titanfall for 360 is out now, so it might catch up to it and boost its overall numbers. So that's something to keep in mind. But for now, this is a good start. This is a good start for the game, and then once the console version comes out, I think that'll only help it more down the line. Speaking of Titanfall, it was #2 this week, and although I am quite surprised that Titanfall yet has not reached over 1 million in sales, at least here in the United States. I'm sure it has globally, but I'm just surprised that it hasn't reached that yet in the United States. And it's been out now for 4 weeks. Because it clearly was the most hyped Xbox One exclusive game out there. I mean, you can talk about Forza, you can talk about Rise, you can talk about Dead Rising 3, all you want, and those were good titles when they first came out. But when they announced Titanfall at E3 and people saw what it was supposed to bring to the table, everybody was hyped. It was getting so much publicity. It was really, people were waiting for this game to come out, and now that it's out, and then they just released the 360 version last week. I mean, we, at least us, have had trouble keeping it on the shelves. We've had to get restocks at least 2-3 times for this game. So, and again, it looks amazing graphically. You still see the commercials, on TV sometimes. So, but I'm just a little bit shocked that it didn't reach the 1 million plateau within the first 4-5 week time frame. So, obviously, right now it's the top-selling console game right now of the year. Period. I mean that is without saying. It's far and away right now above its predecessors. So now with the 360 version that was out, I expect it to hit that 1 million point in the United States very, very soon, because the 360 version I think is going to sell just as well than the Xbox One version. So I expect it to reach that point very, very soon. Third biggest in the past week, MLB 14 The Show. Obviously, this has been, now that baseball season is upon us, this game is really the cornerstone when it comes to baseball games. Now, granted, it is a PS3 only, now PS4 only franchise. It's only Sony. So really, the Xbox doesn't have anything to counter with it unless they release MLB 2K14, which I don't even think they have released yet. I certainly haven't seen it on the shelf yet. So I don't know if they're going to, or if they've now, I know they put out RBI Baseball 14 in some stores, and I think it's available for online download. So that's a good thing. But right now, Sony has the market cornered on the baseball gaming. It almost sold 60,000 copies for PS3 alone in the first week. Overall, the game sold 77,000 copies plus. Which, that's for PS3, PS4, and Vita. So they also put out a Vita version for this game, which is kind of surprising because considering the Vita hasn't done really strong as a whole. But, it did rather well for the first week. However, what's surprising is it didn't eclipse, and I thought it would, it did not eclipse the 6-week totals or 5-week totals of Tales of Symphonia Chronicles. That was just a PS3 exclusive. So that's kind of surprising. I expected, though, to leapfrog that in the weeks to come. Again, this game always, graphically, baseball-wise, it looks the best, tends to always do well. So it's kind of like the Madden of baseball. So I think that it's going to do fine in the weeks to come. Fourth last week, Infamous Second Son, PS4 exclusive. Again, one of those games that when it was showed at E3 got a lot of hype, a lot of intensity. It sold over 50,000 copies last week, and in 3 weeks it sold over 500,000. So right now that does rank it as the second biggest selling game of the 2014 year. Of course, far behind Titanfall. So again, the exclusives right now really are I think are going to lead the way. I think there might be some multi-platforms that could do well. Thief is one, Metal Gear Solid 5 is one, that have done well in the multi-platforms. But that's the exception to the rule. The exclusives really tend to be leading the way right now, and that's Titanfall and that's Infamous Second Son. So I think right now they're going to be the far and away leaders until, again, the other titles come out and we see more of the bigger names further down the line when the really big titles come out toward the summer, end of the year. So not surprised at that at all. Not surprised it's doing this well. Was expected to. So I think, again, it's just going to keep doing well as the weeks go by. And right now, I really can't see a PS4 exclusive that's going, to catch it. Um, PS4 needs some big exclusives to do really well. They haven't really, had much success with their exclusives. We know that Knack was a major disappointment across the board. Drive Club has been pushed back multiple months. Now we don't even know when it's going to be released, so that was a disappointment. Killzone Shadowfall has done rather well. That's kind of its selling title right now. In fact, I think it's still on this top 30 list somewhere. I take that back. It's outside top 30. It's barely still outside top 30. It was 32nd last week. So, but still, it's selling well. So if Infamous can continue that kind of upward trend, I think it will do well and still be in a good place at the end of the year. Fifth biggest game, Minecraft. I mean, Minecraft for 360 has been, it's now sold over 2 million copies in the United States. It's now been out 40 plus weeks and it's still selling this well. I mean, and again, it released at $20 at $19.96. I mean, that alone made it, I think, why it's doing so well. Not only because it's popular, but because of the fact that it put itself out there at $19.96. So, and I still have a lot on the floor, but it's still selling. So, and when the Xbox One version comes out, that game is going to be, again, a big seller for that console as well. Sixth, last week in the USA, or the week of April 5th, Diablo 3 for the PC. Again, the Diablo franchise. Now, the console version, I will say, didn't do as well, but the PC version still amazingly doing well. Now, the disappointing thing is it's almost been out for 100 weeks now, and it hadn't even hit 2 million copies. So that, again, is kind of a bit of a surprise, but there were all the issues with the errors early on and all that, so that was kind of a thing that kind of held it back. Seventh, Metal Gear Solid 5 for PS4, sold over 25,000 copies. Now, we've always thought of the Metal Gear Solid franchise as kind of, falling on hard times lately, kind of same with the Resident Evil vein. Kind of falling out, hitting the skids sales-wise of late because, but at least in this game, in Metal Gear Solid 5, Snake comes back. So that's kind of a huge thing, and that's probably why it's doing so well. In 3 weeks overall, across all its platforms, it sold about 370,000 copies. At the pace it's going to surpass Thief. It might even surpass Dark Souls 2 at their peak sales amount. So it might end up being the fourth highest selling game of 2014 by a couple weeks from now. I don't think it's going to catch South Park, but I think it's going to be on enough of an upward trend that it might, surpass Thief, which has done very, very well in its time, and Dark Souls 2. So certainly this game is going in the right direction. It's trending in the right direction. It's going to be heading up that way very, very soon. Eighth, Pokemon X and Y for 3DS. I mean, obviously the Pokemon franchise is still alive and well, still strong. Over 19,000 this week alone. It sold over 3 million total in 26 weeks. Clearly there's no stopping it anytime soon. Ninth, Call of Duty Ghosts for 360. 18,000 copies this week. The 360 version has now sold over 5 million copies since its time it was released. The PS3 version has sold over 3 million. The PS4 version eclipsed the million mark this week, so clearly Ghosts continues to be one of the best. Now, of course, it's still not up there with Grand Theft Auto 5, which of course was the best-selling game of last year, and it's still busting numbers. The 360 version is now over 7 million copies. The PS3 version is now over 5 million copies. So that's 12 million versions sold of Grand Theft Auto 5. Clearly, it's one of the best. Now, making a quick comparison, you want to know how well Titanfall's doing? Titanfall for Xbox One, again, it sold over 800,000 copies on its own. Forza 5 hasn't even reached that in 20 weeks. Forza 5 is only at 680,000 copies in 20 weeks. That just tells you how well Titanfall is doing. And again, that's an Xbox One exclusive. So outside of Titanfall, Dead Rising 3 is only 31st. So again, exclusives right now for Xbox One, there could be no denying that Titanfall is tops. If it can smash in 4 weeks, and what Forza 5 hasn't been able to hit in 20 weeks, really telling. And then 10th last week in the United States was MLB 14, the show for Vita. 18,000 copies, surprisingly. I must say that is impressive for a Vita title. So now looking overall at what we have so far for the year. Obviously, we've said Titanfall is one. And again, with now the Xbox 360 version out, I expect it to top 1 million, be the first game of 2014 to top 1 million copies in sales in the United States. I mean, period. Infamous Second Son is second, over 500,000 copies in 3 weeks. South Park Stick of Truth is now at about 450,000 copies in 5 weeks since its release. I do expect it to eclipse the 500,000 mark. Do I expect it to catch Infamous? That is going to be a telling battle. That is going to be, because this South Park game, I mean, it took weeks and weeks and weeks. They kept pushing this game further and further and further back. We had pre-sale cards on the floor for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it kept getting pushed further and further back, and then finally it was ready for release. And maybe that's the reason why it's not doing as well as many had hoped, but still, the fact that it's right now third biggest game of 2014, it tells you how ready people were ready to get this game in their hands. They wanted it so quickly, but the fact that a PS4 exclusive was able to top it so fast, you know, just 3 weeks later, kind of telling, don't you think? So I don't know. I certainly think it will eclipse 500,000 copies in the United States, but I don't know if it's going to leapfrog Infamous. If it does, that's a huge win for the South Park guys, because again, you top a PS4 exclusive that got a lot of hype. That's huge, but that's going to be a battle to watch in the weeks coming forward. Dark Souls 2 is fourth. It's just got shy of 400,000 copies when it peaked in its sales. I think certainly it might reach that number very soon, but again, you know, it's not going to catch the big boys. Thief surprised me. I think so far it's one of the biggest surprises of the year, and I didn't even know that Thief was a remake until a customer came up and told me, oh yeah, Thief's a remake, it's not a new game. I thought it was honestly a new game, but that's why you get, you know, things from customers, because they feel you in on what's going on. And for a remake game to do that well, over 370,000 copies since its release, maybe even more than that, I'm quite impressed. I'm certainly impressed by the job that Thief has done as a multi-platform game. So I'm quite impressed. Metal Gear Solid 5 is currently 6th, and again, I think it's going to leapfrog those two in the coming weeks. The Lego Movie video game. Now, this is not just 3DS. This is multi-platform. This is across actually all platforms where this game was released for. And normally, an Angry Joe can verify, can vouch this for me, movie licensed games usually do not do very well. But the Lego Movie has done so well in theaters. The Lego brand has so much, you know, gravitas to it. Such a huge brand. It is just done so well across all its platforms. We keep getting copies in for Wii U, for 3DS on our shelves, for 360, for Xbox One, all the different consoles. And I think, unless the big boys top it, it might end up in the top 10 of the year. Very, very surprising for a movie game to do this well. But again, Lego, for kids and parents alike, that catchy song, you know which one I'm talking about. So, what can you say? Lightning Returns Final Fantasy is 8th currently for the year. It capped at over 266,000 copies. It didn't get a whole lot of hype. The Final Fantasy series, I think can only do so much now. They've just put out the remaster version for PS3 and for Vita, and through 3 weeks, it's almost to what Lightning Returns' top number was at 234,000 copies. So they're kind of battling that out there. They just released Final Fantasy XIV for the PS4 this week, so a lot of Final Fantasy going on out there. But the question is, does it still have, the huge following that it always does? Is it still, does it still have the train, the locomotive moving? I don't know. One that has surprised me is Bravely Default for 3DS. It is currently 10th on my list of total games sold for the year. This is a 3DS exclusive. This is one that was just made for the 3DS, and it has sold over 200,000 copies, 220,000 to be exact. And again, kind of in the same vein, now you have different powers in the game you can combine together. You can use the Brave or the Default together. I read up on it, and actually, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not really too fond in, kind of the anime feel of these games. Tales of Symphonia is in the same vein. Tales of Xillia was in the same vein. So, but, it's doing right well. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that it's right now the top 3DS exclusive of the year. I thought for sure that Yoshi's New Island, there hasn't been a Yoshi game in several years, and I thought that it would leapfrog it early. In 4 weeks, Bravely Default has been out now for 9 weeks. In 4 weeks, Yoshi's New Island has only got to about half the sales of Bravely Default's peak sales. That's telling. To me, that's telling. The fact that Yoshi didn't have much pull as he once did anymore, to me, that's telling. That's really telling. I thought that game would do a lot better than what it was. That one might end up in my biggest disappointment list because I thought that one would do a heck of a lot better. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Wii U exclusive. It's the only one that Wii U's releasing really as an exclusive so far this year. It capped, just short of 200,000 copies. I think, it's Donkey Kong still sells. I mean, clearly that shows that Donkey Kong still sells regardless of the console. So I think at the end it's going to do well. One that really, to me, kind of ended up as kind of a disappointment was Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare. I thought it would be a really big title for Xbox, for 360 and the Xbox One. When it was really selling well, it didn't even hit 200,000 copies. It really has been kind of a major disappointment as a whole for Xbox. It was a whole new way to play. It was, you go against either, and now in this, big battle situation with the two, and they showed it off so well at E3. They were really getting into it, and really showing how it worked, and really it hasn't done that well. So I was quite surprised at that. I mentioned Tales of Symphonia, how well it's doing. Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2. I think the fact that this game got pushed back so much in the end has really hurt it, and the fact that they released it at such a time where there are big titles out there, it has really hurt that in terms of sales. It has not done very well. Same with Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. I don't think anyone expected that to do very well. It really didn't last for too long in the top 30. And then there's the ones that really just have fallen outside the top 30. Fable Anniversary, the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition. Your relaunches usually don't do that well. NASCAR 14. I'm surprised that one really didn't put out some strong sales numbers. It really hasn't. The Dragon Ball Z game that came out the start of the year has been out now 10 plus weeks. Still no solid numbers. And then a couple titles that were just launched last week surprisingly did not make the top 30. And I was surprised. Kinect Sports Rivals. You realize how much this game was hyped as an Xbox One exclusive? This game was so hyped as an exclusive for Xbox One. Oh, the Kinect scans it scans your face recognition. You're actually in the game. You're a champion. You're going against your rivals in all these different sports. And it didn't even make top 30 in sales first week. I mean, and maybe it's also because that stores didn't get enough copies. You know how many copies we got first week of Kinect Sports Rivals? Two. And the only reason that they sold was because we had a working demo unit in the store on the same day showing Kinect Sports Rivals. And they sold that day. 2. Oh. Xbox is just getting punched left and right, taking shots. And Titanfall right now is the only platform they can stand on because Plants vs. Zombies, joke. Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, joke. Kinect Sports Rivals, joke. And Forza maybe was the only thing to stand on. Forza was the big thing, but now Titanfall's past it. What do you have to show for us, Xbox One? It's not getting the job done right now. And that's why PS4 is still outselling you. Even though it seems like they have less titles available, they are still outselling you. And I'm a PS4 owner. I can see why. Because you have nothing to stand on. Even, you have one game to stand on. Even though the PS4 does not have as many exclusives, and their exclusives are still kind of stinking, although Infamous Second Son is getting right up there. Not quite, but close. Even though it seems like the exclusives aren't as good, their titles as a whole are still doing well, and the console is still outselling you. You even dropped your price by $50. $50. And you know what? Last week, guess what sold better? PS4 by almost 50,000 units. You know how much it's ahead by in the US total? By almost 300,000 units. Duh! All Xbox One has to stand on right now is Titanfall. That's it. That's what they're banking on. Oh, please let this game sell us more copies. And they've bundled it now with guess what? Guess what? Guess what? The only bundles that are available for the Xbox One right now? Titanfall and Forza. Gee, I wonder why. It's all they have to stand on. Until these maybe better titles come out or something, it's all they have to stand on. And the PS4 is still outselling you. Nah, 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 nah. That's what Sony's saying to them. Nah, 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 boo-boo. We're still outselling you. I don't get it, but whatever. So, yeah. So that's... Oh, of course, it has to end with another long rant. Of course. Of course it does. So what do we have debuting in stores this week? Disney Magical World, exclusive for the 3DS. Trials Fusion, the motorcycle racing game, is out this week for Xbox One and PS4, so we'll see how well it does. FIFA World Cup 2014 is out this week for 360 and PS3. And also, as I mentioned, Final Fantasy 14 is out for the PS4. So we will see how well these do next week, and if Infamous can gain ground on Titanfall, and will Metal Gear Solid leapfrog the other two games I mentioned. A lot to discuss in these weeks to come. A lot to discuss. And then when we get into the month of May, some big titles are coming out as well. We got the new Kirby game coming out for 3DS. The new Mario Golf game for 3DS is coming out in May. Mario Kart 8 for Wii U is coming out in May. So, there's a lot to come before we get to the big titles like Destiny coming out in September. So, still a lot to track and a lot to dissect. So, that's it for this first edition of Plugged In. Again, if you guys want to talk video games, what you like, what you've seen in sales, what you're playing right now, let me know. Let me know in the comments here on the channel or down below as well. And then next week we'll take a look again at the sales from this week's games as well, along with last week's as well. Whatever the chart shows, we'll break it down on here and again look at the total so far for the year. That's what we're doing kind of on a weekly basis. I still haven't decided whether or not to add a second yet or add something else like with the sports topics. I think I'm going to focus on this for now. We'll see how well this does, and then go from there. So thank you guys again for the views, for subscribing, for your thoughts on things. I love that with you guys sharing. And stay tuned next week for another edition of Plugged In. Thanks, guys. God bless.